Okay, guys, this is a spreadsheet to help you get your brain around potential conflicts between the 15s and the 16s teams and maybe sort it out. I hope it's helpful. This 25-26 tournaments, I sent you the link to a few days ago. The main sheet has every age group. There's a column for each age group, and you can sort by that. But I went ahead and isolated the 15s and 16s only. So the purple rows are the West Coast League tournaments, and you can see they're for 15 and 16. So they both can't do it if you both want to be at the tournaments. The yellow rows are NCBA Power League for 15s, and the green rows are NCBA Power League for 16s. The days of the tournaments are here. With NCVA, they have some tournaments that are either on one day, like this League One, or another day. So there's an alternate day, and we won't know which day they're choosing until later on. Tournaments that have a second and third day that will show in this column. So the West Coast League tournaments are all 2 day. So you can see this League One and Two is January 24th and January 25th, and it's for both 15s and 16s. This NCVA qualifier is also 24th and 25th, and it's only for 15s. This NCVA Power Qualifier is January 31st and February 1st, and it's only for 16s. And then this NCVA Power League One is either February 7th or February 8th. We won't know for a little while, and that's only for 15s. So that's how it works. This is the tournament information. The next two columns are what age group those tournaments are for per their websites, and we'll want to double check all of that before we make final decisions. Okay, I'm going to hide these columns. Okay, so now we have some scenarios, and we'll need to look at those non-league tournaments and make decisions too. So scenario one is in this column. This is or 15s in West Coast, 16s in NCVA. Scenario two, 16s in West Coast, 15s in NCVA. And scenario three is both of them in NCVA. So it's basically compiled onto this one column. In this case, 15s are on all the purple rows because they are West Coast, and 16s are on all the green columns because they are power. This sheet is already sorted by day one so that we can see, if they're right next to each other, if there's a conflict. But keep in mind, there's those alternate days. So in this first scenario, you'll see that there's no conflict until the end of the season. The West Coast and regionals or West Coast League 5 and 6 conflict with the NCVA regionals. And you won't be able to be at both of these, right, as both coaches. So that's the downside of this scenario, but it happens at the end of the season when your teams are established. On the other hand, if we do 16s West Coast, 15s NCVA, the only conflict is at the very beginning, which may be more preferable because you don't have the momentum quite yet. And maybe the end is more important. You guys can decide what's more important, the beginning or the end. Basically, to have Tristan, as the assistant that's there versus missing because he's with his own team. So in this case, this is where I saw the conflict. You'll want to double check this. And the conflict is on a 2 day tournament, either at the beginning of the season or a 2 day tournament in this scenario at the end of the season. So we can't really get around those. Now, if you want to consider putting both of them into NCVA, there may be a conflict or there may not, because the only potential conflicts are on these 1 day league tournaments where it's either going to be on the Saturday or the Sunday. So we can roll the dice and hope, for instance, that League Two for 15s ends up on Saturday and League One for 16s ends up on Sunday. So it's really rolling the dice. Um, And then same thing for both of their League Three tournaments. They're the same weekend. We just don't know what day. NCVA tournaments are just one day for league. They're just longer days, as you guys probably remember. Um, but then it's nice because there's no conflict with the regionals, so that may be a good scenario. You can see what you think. Okay, on non-leagues, they obviously can't both do like President's Day. That's for both age groups, right? So you'll need to decide who's going to do President's Day, or if, Tristan's just not going to be there for a certain tournament. And if we need to have, I don't know, a contingency plan for a second assistant coach that would work well for your 15s team, if you guys decide to do that. Okay, so some considerations for these non-league, if you look at the scenario that you're going to go with. So let's say we go with this very first one, and with 15s, their first tournament is going to be January 24th. And with 16s, their first tournament is going to be a week later on the 31st. Then when you're making choices up here, they've both done Jamboree, and of course, that'll be the same day. So you guys will be split up for that. Um, but you may want to do, say, 16s in the Redwood Rumble. That's January 3rd and 4th. It's probably not quite as competitive, but we're not sure, as the Winter Classic or NorCal Classic. But then they'll have a tournament, and then about 4 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they'll have their first Power League qualifier. And I did this with Dana when she was looking at her two teams. So you can consider, is that going to be a good gap between tournaments in that scenario? And then with 16s doing NCVA, if you decide you're going to have them do Winter Classic or NorCal Classic, then their first league tournament is going to be the very next weekend in this scenario. Right, so 15s if they're doing West Coast. So they have a tournament, bam, and then another tournament. Is that optimal? And that may also sway you on which league scenario you would like to do. So in the second scenario, we have 16s. Their league is West Coast, and 15s is doing NCVA. They both have that conflict, or they have the conflict if they're both going to be doing they're going to be doing this scenario, right? And so you guys will not both be there for them. John would be on his own for these two tournaments that are conflicting with each other. So you may want to see how that would play out with whatever first tournament you have between, or whatever tournament you have between Jamboree and that date. And this third one may be more optimal because you have 15s on the 24th and 25th, and you have 16s on the 31st and 1st. And kind of in line with that, if you have 15s doing NCVA Power, they could do Redwood Rumble. They have like 2 weeks off, and then they come and they do their Power qualifier. 16s, meanwhile, they can do Winter Classic, for example. They have a few weeks off, similar gap, and they come and do the qualifier. So if you want to look into these tournaments or try to get the word on the street, you can talk to April or other coaches to make sure it's at the appropriate level. We want to make sure the 16s don't get creamed in whatever they choose. So Redwood Rumble, I think, may be an easier tournament, and that may be a better experience for them versus Winter Classic or NorCal Classic. But that may be more of a word on the street with coaches kind of thing, or April knows better with that. And then you'll just make the same decision with President's Day. Spring Challenge, I think, is not great competition, and same with March Madness. So these may be good ones for the 16s, they may still be kind of below the 16s because these are ones we're looking at for our regional and premier teams. Okay, and then final note is on Red Rock Rave. For this particular weekend, it's 15s Open and USA. And all of 16s. So if 15s need to be open or USA, I'm guessing USA's maybe a possibility, maybe not. Then there's going to be a conflict with 16s and they'll need to be doing a different flyaway tournament. However, down here you'll see Red Rock Rave. It's Easter weekend, but this is where 15's Liberty would be, and 16's won't be there at all. So if Liberty's okay for 15, you could do this weekend and just know it's Easter weekend. And 16's could do Red Rock up here in mid-March. Um, Far Westerns, there's no conflict, fortunately, which is nice. If you decide you need to look outside of Red Rock for a flyaway tournament that will be best for your team, then I have Chicago, Windy City Classic here. It's also Easter weekend. Pacific Northwest qualifier is Spokane, expensive airplane tickets. So the families may not like that one, but that's also an option. Um, you could also look at JVA West Coast Cup. I don't have that on here, I don't think yet, but that's usually at the very end of May. So that's a flyaway tournament, not a national qualifier, but really good level of competition there. Either of them could do the West Coast finals as well, but again, same weekend. But they don't have to be in the West Coast League to do that finals, and that would be probably local, maybe Reno, but it's either going to be Sacramento or Reno, something like that. You could also look at Lone Star Classic, which is in Texas at different locations this year, and those were just released, so you could look at that. Um, and let's see, I guess there's also I had another one in mind. Well, any of those national qualifiers. So we've told each of your teams that there'll be one flyaway tournament. So we want to make sure we have that. And then Far Westerns. And you can look on the Five Stars site, I guess, final note here, and see that there's like, I don't know, two or three local tournaments, and then a flyaway and Far Westerns. And then there's the league tournaments. And so you're kind of mixing and matching these local tournaments. Cap City Clash is another one, I think, lower level of competition, to find a good balance. One flyaway, Far Westerns, and then the appropriate league. Okay, I hope that makes sense.